And we're back. We're live. The big one. The Egypt special. Nate, what's going on?
The Egypt special that didn't happen. I mean, we were supposed to do it on Saturday.
I know. This isn't the Egypt special?
We can discuss all things Egypt, but I wanted to be prepared.
Yeah, okay. Are we?
Not really.
But you're going to Egypt. Are we counting that as prep?
I've been doing some prep. But I think the more I learn, the less I know.
Oh, my God. Where do you start?
Yeah, the more confused I get.
Yeah. What do you do? It's a pretty rough topic. It's a pretty tough topic. A lot of people have had a crack at it. All right? A lot of people are still having a crack at it.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. It's great. It's great.
Is.
But the deeper you go, the more uncertain it is.
Yeah. I mean, at a base level, pretend like you're a blank state, right? Do you just tell people about the pyramids? You know what I mean? Is that the first thing that people know about ancient Egypt? They go, oh, yeah, ancient Egypt, pyramids.
Yeah, well, that's one of the first things. Definitely. That's something people are familiar with. I mean, I'm quite looking forward to Saqqara, but not as many people are familiar with that complex. So I'm hesitant to even mention it. It was just before the 3 pyramids of Giza. So this is in the 3rd dynasty. I'm just seeing if there's any good images of it. The step pyramid itself doesn't look like much, but all the casing stones, we're down to like the 3rd layer of masonry, what you're looking at now. The casing stones and the stones below that have been removed. It doesn't look like much, but this thing has a lot of underground tunnels.
Yep.
And it also has some really cool facades. There's like a doorway through a really modern-looking wall that you may see in some
complex?
of the pictures.
Right.
It is a funerary complex. This is what's interesting, actually. This is actually a tomb. So this one has all these ornate markings and hieroglyphs and funerary texts marking the insides of it, right? This is a tomb. Now, the pyramids themselves don't have any of these hieroglyphs.
Also have never had bodies in them. No,
and the pyramids were after this construction. So it's not like the funerary texts were anything new. They knew about them. This had already they were in the habit of using hieroglyphs and things and markings and whatnot on the inside.
It's a very cool door if we're talking about the same one, which I assume we are.
Yeah, we will be.
Fantastic.
We will be. And so that goes down into all these underground passages and things. And when this was new, it would have looked like some kind of fancy modern day university.
Yes.
A little bit like the pyramids of Giza when they were new and they had all their they just would have looked stunning. They would have looked unbelievable.
And probably a power plant, while you're at it.
Well, that's the big question about why, people, I think a lot of scholars say they were tombs because you don't know what else
you would do this for.
They don't know what else they would do it for. And they knew that they did have a culture of they really venerated the afterlife. So there's just a lot of assumptions going on, but it's all circumstantial. And that's what I mean about the waters getting pretty muddy and murky. The deeper you go is you realize that people just make a lot of assumptions and no one actually knows. It's not clear.
It's so long ago.
It's so long ago. It's so fucking long ago. It really is. And another fascinating thing.
Yes.
Where in Saqqara, for example, in these tombs, there's a lot of the hieroglyphs depict everyday life. And if it wasn't for these depictions of everyday life, scholars actually wouldn't have a good understanding of what happened in everyday life that long ago.
Correct.
But then what's interesting is there's no depictions of them constructing the pyramids. And I'm not saying I'm of the view they were constructed with the date we've now landed on of 2450 BC.
Happy with that?
I'm quite happy with that.
Yep.
I'm not saying that they are older than that, but it's just interesting that the biggest construction ever engaged in by humans was not depicted in these hieroglyphs when they depict so many things. They invented writing virtually. I mean, Sumeria started writing, but we're pretty close to that. We're in the same kind of period of time when writing developed.
Yeah.
And the Egyptians were all about documenting this stuff and writing and recording history.
Why wouldn't they do that?
Yeah, and there's a couple of depictions of humans moving stones with ropes, but not really nothing. Again, that's why I think that people use the idea of them using humans to build the pyramids. Obviously, how else are they going to do it? They don't have anything but manpower.
Yes,
as far as we're aware.
Yes, and if you you can't just go crazy with it immediately and say it was the aliens or something. Of course,
no. But what's interesting is the idea of them being built by slaves. I think sounds like, well, to quote Graham Hancock, he says that is utter bullshit.
Yeah, well, they only discovered in the last sort of 5-10 years that there were slave quarters nearby. They pointed at some rocks on the ground near the Giza plateau and they said, oh, these were slave quarters. But they weren't slave quarters. They were just, they could tell based off the assortment of rocks on the ground 3,500, 5,000 years later, they could tell, these archaeologists, that they weren't slaves' quarters, in fact. They were just worker quarters. And people had, I think they based it off people having belongings, which wasn't normal for a slave to have belongings. So they were like, oh, well, they weren't slaves. These were regular, everyday people building the thing, right? So that was only 5 or 10 years ago.
And I don't know how they make these
rocks. No, they pointed at the rocks. They just pointed at them.
The rocks. Yeah. I've also heard that they've seen beer they've somehow detected beer in some of these areas, and then they've made I've heard some people say they couldn't have been slaves because they were feeding them beer, and I'm like, how do you know that beer was related to the same people that were building the pyramids? I do not know.
Again, they would have just pointed at a couple of rocks and said beer.
Some of the 70 to 100 ton granite slabs that are used in the Giza pyramid. There's a scientist or an engineer that is of the view that they were, and I think they're built by humans as well, but it's just very far-fetched to understand how humans could do it. He's sort of made, he says at an angle of 1.25 degrees, you could, if you had he calculated if you had 900 humans pulling in unison, you could pull this thing up on sleds that have been made wet, or you put a bit of mud and wetness on the rails, and you put the rock on the rails. You can pull a rock of that size using 900 people.
Right.
Now the problem we have is one of the reasons why it's unlikely, in my opinion, that slaves were used is how do you control? They needed to have hundreds of thousands of workers. Hundreds of thousands of workers in this process. When you're going from the quarry to the pyramids, the organization is crazy. If you are also have to treat them like cattle that are trying to escape,
you'd need a lot of soldiers or people to enforce that.
You need as many soldiers. They didn't have machine guns.
So what did they have?
And you have to feed them well because they're doing huge amounts of work.
Hard labor.
So what are you going to do? Have 100,000 people like gulags, like Russian gulags?
Yeah, completely expendable. Let them all die in the heat. Yeah,
but you don't have machine guns. You don't have the kind of weaponry and manpower. You need as many soldiers.
You're saying that they were pulling towards a common goal of some sort. There was something to be. There was something to be had from this.
I think they were all on board. I think they had to mobilize the whole population towards one goal. Yeah,
and you could do that through deception. Like, it doesn't mean it was a completely, good for everyone thing. It might have just been good for a couple of people. We don't know, but they could have either said it could have been a religious thing. They could have been like, "We got to do this. It's for the gods." I don't know. That would have worked.
Well, for the pharaoh, I think they believed in the pharaoh. The pharaoh was supposed to be akin
God on
to
earth.
God on earth. It's the human representation of God, and that person is going to go live in the stars as a god and we're gonna set him up to show that basically I don't know why they're so invested in getting this guy there, but they believed.
But again, that's sort of attributing the meaning of the pyramids, like what they were built for. Again, we just don't know.
No, we don't know.
Could have been to shoot pharaohs to the stars. Yep, absolutely, sure.
One of the reasons why I'm so bullish on the time frame of 2450 BC for the pyramids, that firstly that the Giza pyramid, the biggest one, that was the first one, and then the so when I say the Giza pyramid, I think it's called the Khafre, was the Egyptian name for the pharaoh that has been attributed to. He was the pharaoh ruling when that was constructed, and then his son, and the Greek name for him for Khafre is Cheops. Yeah, so you may have heard of Cheops pyramid.
Cheops. I
don't know. I have no idea how to say this stuff. Hey,
of course.
And then the second one, which is only 6 meters shorter, but looks bigger because it's situated slightly higher in the Giza plateau. That's the Khufu pyramid, I think it is. I could be switching these around as well. Who knows? That's the Khufu pyramid.
Well, you think the main one could be Khufu now?
I don't think so. I think it's Khafre. But my understanding of this is so rudimentary.
But is that the one you were mentioning to me that it looks bigger because of its elevation? Yeah,
a lot of people from a distance, you look at it and you think the middle one looks the biggest, but in fact that's 140 meters high. Whereas the one that's commonly called the Giza pyramid, I just call it the Giza pyramid. I think it is
the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Great Pyramid of Giza. Yes, that one is the Khafre pyramid /
largest Egyptian pyramid. Cheops. It's actually Khufu's.
Oh, that's Khufu's.
That's Khufu.
So that's 146.6 meters. Okay, so that's Khufu. So the second one's Khafre.
Second one's Khafre. Yep.
And the last one, I think it's is it MYC something or other?
Yeah, Menkaru.
And do you know if that's the Egyptian name? Because normally there's 2 names given to each of these.
It just says Menkaru.
Yeah, that one looks small. That's about 50 meters or so. But apparently it's a behemoth. Like when it's a huge amount of stone, but it's just because you're comparing it to the two nearby.
It wouldn't even get a kick. Like if you're at the Giza plateau and you're like, cool, we're going to the Valley Temple, then we're going to the big boy, and then we're going to Khafre's. Menkaru's pyramid doesn't even get a kick. If you wanted to know the Greek, it's Menkeres.
Okay, it's pretty similar.
Yeah.
It's helpful. But I hope my tour takes me to all 3 because they all have underground. They all have at least one chamber.
Yeah, but most people, well, when I say most people, I don't even think that's true, but a lot of people who have an interest in this stuff know about the chambers in the Great Pyramid.
Yes. Yeah. Because they actually have the other 2 pyramids only have chambers underneath the bedrock and the pyramid sits on top. The Great Pyramid has chambers inside the body of the pyramid.
Right.
And the reason why I'm so bullish on the date of 2450 BC is not only we've finally landed on that date. It's gone back and forth. There was always a range of dates for these. We knew who the kings were, the pharaohs were, but we didn't necessarily know exactly when they ruled. But they've now largely agreed on around that period of time. And what's fascinating is there's this book called The Orion Mystery. And he was looking at there's 2 main chambers in Khufu's pyramid.
Yep.
The king's chamber.
Yep.
And the queen's chamber.
Yeah.
And there's a long, boring story about why they called that. But anyway, in the king's chamber, they were covered up originally. So the first people in the pyramid, until about 100 years ago, they didn't know of these. But there's 2 20 centimetre by 20 centimetre
the
shafts, yes, cut. And they were originally covered by a small amount of rock or something that somehow someone figured out. I think they were tapping around looking for doors and stuff, and they figured out, they're like,
don't you reckon it would have been filling up from the outside?
Apparently,
with rock?
Apparently not. Not. Apparently there was rock that was that was put in place somehow, and I don't understand. It didn't look like a brick or anything. Someone knew about it. Someone blocked it up, and I don't really know how. I don't know if they used what material they used or anything.
Probably cellies.
Bit of cellies. Yeah, bit of cellies. Bang that. No more gaps. And And those shafts from the King's Pyramid go all the way to the exterior of the pyramid.
Yes, and sort of point up at the stars in an interesting way, right?
They do. I'll get that in a moment. But you can put a bowling ball in them and it rolls all the way down.
Fantastic. I'm sure they do that.
Yeah, they've done that. I don't know.
They do that pretty regularly on a Friday or something.
I love it how there's all these like scientists or Egyptologists or whoever is allowed to do this stuff, and someone comes up with this idea like, hey man, let's put a bowling ball in. Yeah,
it's pretty. You wouldn't do it nowadays, but it could have been, the norm in the 70s and prior, perhaps, in the archaeological community to do stuff like that.
Perhaps.
Now we just send robots, to be honest, up the thing.
Yeah, it's human nature. It's human nature just to put a bowling ball in there, though. You see like a gap that's big enough and you think, what can I stick in this hole?
Exactly. It's completely natural.
And the Queen's Chamber also has two chambers, what were we calling them? Shafts. Yeah. That go, and look, by the way, they're called ventilation chambers just because they don't know what else their purpose was. Again, there's a lot we don't understand. There's only circumstantial evidence.
Get some air in there. Yeah,
and it was quite handy because it was getting really sweaty and shitty conditions inside the Great Pyramid as more and more tourists would come in. And then when they found these air chambers, they're like, oh fuck yeah! They put some fans on the outside, so we used them as ventilation shafts, but they don't really know their original purpose. In the Queen's Chamber, the shafts don't quite go all the way to the end of the pyramid. And this is where, as you say, we've put some robots up those. And there's this really famous if you start Googling it, called Gattenbrink's Door.
Yes. The old thing with a little handle on it. Little door.
Yeah, and I haven't looked – the book I was reading was produced in I think it was mid-90s or something. And Mr. Gattenbrink had located this door, and I think, and we have since drilled a hole in it, is my understanding, and stuck a camera in, and there's a few weird markings that they've been trying to aren't
this
hieroglyphs.
This is different from the chamber they've detected.
This is different from that.
Right.
Yes, using some kind of sonar or ultrasound or whatever. It's some kind of ground penetrating radar on the pyramid.
Yeah. They use some sort of radar in the pyramid to sort of get a 3D mock-up of it, basically.
And I don't know how accurate that is. I've heard that as well. I've seen it. I haven't really looked into it. I don't know if what their margin for error is for whether there's a chamber or not, because I would have thought if you can conclude 100% there's a chamber, the dimensions are approximately this, this is location, aren't we going there?
Yeah, I think we are going there because what it is it's full of sand, to my understanding. Oh. It's full of sand, and they're going to have to get something like a robot to go in, and it's called the big void.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that because
the antechamber.
There's so much material and there's so much bullshit about it. This one of the things I've found learning about Egypt is sifting through a lot of bullshit, and that's why I haven't paid too much attention to Gattenbrink's Door. Because if you YouTube that, you get 100 dudes all having their 2 cents, and I was like, I don't have time for figuring out what this is. Where there's certain sources I trust, and they also seem to say what they'll state when they're sticking their neck out, and it's their own idea, and they'll say why. But they'll say that this is not proven. This is just, I think this for these reasons. And then they'll say what other scholars think and what the other views are. And it seems to be quite balanced in that they're putting out all these things. They say, make of it what you will. There's this. I think it's this. This guy thinks it's this. This guy thinks, and obviously the author will be biased towards their own opinions, but they at least try to portray a balanced view.
Yeah.
So John Anthony West, who's very well known. I like his stuff because he's also ballsy enough to make some bold claims on the evidence as he sees it, and it's very interesting.
That is true. He's a good guy. And you will be going through the Robbers Tunnel, as it's known. Is that correct?
Yes, our moon's entrance or something like that.
Sorry?
When you say the Robbers Tunnel, is this into the Khufu Pyramid?
Yes, that is the main entrance for tourists.
Yes, I think it's like Al something.
Yeah, that's
he was
the actual name of the bloke who went in there. Yep.
Yeah, so he was he was like some Persian king or something. So yeah, that's it. Like basically their king equivalent. Started just blowing his way in there. They didn't have explosives, did they? So they must have just started carving at because they couldn't find the entrance.
With a battering ram, they're saying, in 820 AD, workmen with a battering ram smashed in.
Yeah, basically. I knew it was around the 9th century.
And you can see that the main entry, what you would call the grand entry, or whatever you want to call it, is really close to where the Robbers Tunnel begins, but it begins with a descending passageway, which links up to the Robbers Tunnel. So very, very crazy stuff, man.
And the history of – I've got this book called the fuck me, what is it? I need to find it. It's a well-known one that's a lot of people recommend. It goes through the history of like everyone, all the main scientists and scholars and whatnot that have done work on the Great Pyramid, and it sort of sets out all their thoughts and findings as it was through the eras. And it wasn't until the 9th century till that bloke forced his way in. Took a bloody long time, and they found because once they got through to the descending passage,
yes,
and then the ascent, it just goes down into the bedrock. And it's like an unfinished chamber down there.
Yeah, there's more.
Well, when they say when I say unfinished, all these things, when we're making assumptions, when I call it unfinished, we don't know if it's finished or not. That's just it looks unfinished to someone who doesn't.
It does compared to the rest of the structure. Okay.
Yeah, the walls are kind of a bit, and the floors are a bit more.
They can't date that shit, right? That's the bedrock.
They can't date.
So therefore, it could have been done after. It could have been done before.
That's right. And then the ascending passage that goes to the Queen's Chamber and the King's Chamber was blocked by massive granite plugs.
Yeah,
granite's one of the hardest.
When were they taken out?
Well, they had to force their way around those. They had to carve through the limestone of the pyramid around them because the granite's too hard. And they don't understand they don't understand that they obviously slid down the ascending passage into place, but they don't really know
how they did that.
How they did it. Yeah. It's quite fascinating. And there's this one we'll call it a pit, a descending pit that goes from just where the Queen's Chamber entrance is down like almost vertical to the descending passage. And they think that may have been what people used. That got blocked up by rubble over the many years, and then eventually they managed to sort of push their way through and re-establish that route. But they think that maybe the people who released the system for the granite plugs to push their way down and block the entrance used that as their escape route.
Oh. They
think that's maybe because they think if you're going the other way, if you used it
if you're using an escape route, then surely that just creates another thing that you have to plug up.
It certainly does. This is another mystery. They don't know what that function is. That's one thought process. They go maybe they used the people that used it, use it to escape. But then you're exactly right. You're putting these big granite plugs in place, and there's just this other route.
Yeah, exactly.
That's slightly more arduous, but you don't have to go through granite plugs. And the other theory, is that robbers used it to burrow their way up beyond somehow they got into maybe they found the entrance to the descending passage. They went down there, and then they decided for whatever reason to burrow their way up and just perfectly found the entry point of the tunnel to the Queen's Chamber. The reason why that's so unlikely is you'd have to have the designs of the pyramid because the chances of
blueprints.
You'd have to have the blueprints. And then the most plausible theory I've heard, which is still so not far-fetched, but it seems so unlikely, is that there may have been an earthquake and they were worried about the King's Chamber having suffered structural damage internally, and that people who understand the nature of the pyramid you burrowed their way up to check because they had to understand to burrow that passage, you'd have to have the plans, as we said, and that they were checking on the structural integrity of the insides. But again, to me, and there is evidence of some cracking in some of the huge rocks inside the King's Chamber. So they think that may have been evidence of this earthquake they were talking about. But to me, that seems like a lot of work just to check if those are intact, and you're compromising the integrity of compromising the integrity of the security of the chamber.
Yeah.
I think the pyramid may have been used as some kind of this is also John Anthony West, a possibility. He doesn't know. Yeah. He just puts out the possibilities, like a temple of initiation, where they did it's some kind of initiation, or when you transition from being a human to going into the afterlife, there was some kind of funerary practice they had to the mummified body where they break open your jaw with some kind of copper implement, and something happens. I don't fully understand what that thing was, but they think it may have been that's where the location where they did some kind of practice.
Yeah, but when are they saying that they plugged it up?
Don't know. No idea.
No idea when it got plugged.
No idea when it got plugged, why it got plugged.
So it was possible that it was in use for a while and then someone plugged it up.
Definitely. Oh, definitely possible, yeah.
Someone with a lot of engineering know-how plugged it up.
Yeah, I think you'd have to be pretty skilled, because also I think it was designed to be plugged. That's the other thing that seems so that whoever, because I think that the granite plugs, the way it works is that the passage is narrow at the bottom and wider at the top. So as it slides down, it naturally fills all the plugs they use naturally fill the space, and you probably had to have the plugs in there when you were constructing it.
My God.
And that's the other fascinating thing, that big granite sarcophagus in there that they call it a sarcophagus because
that's what I was going to bring up. The one in the King's Chamber.
The one in the King's Chamber.
The one with the big nip taken out of it, yep.
So the idea is that's a sarcophagus, and if it was used as a tomb, the body of the pharaoh gets put in the sarcophagus and taken into the King's Chamber to lay to rest or whatever.
Yeah, but the dimensions of it, does it not fit through the door?
It doesn't fit through the door. So
it doesn't fit through the door.
The sarcophagus was put there during construction prior to, or it manifested itself there in a miracle.
Isn't there a little, you'll go there, you'll be able to see this. There's a little square, like a block next to it on its right that sort of doesn't look like it should, not that it doesn't look like it should be there, but it looks different to the other stones.
Yeah.
And the idea is that you pull that one out and you can slide the sarcophagus. Check the dimensions when you're there. You'll be able to slide the sarcophagus through that hole in the wall.
There is no hole in the wall.
No, but they're made up of individual blocks, the walls.
Yeah, but it would have to be put in there when it was constructed, right?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, my understanding is that that big granite sarcophagus can't fit in. It's like having a couch in your living room that's too big to fit through the door.
Yep.
So yeah, you have to put the couch in when you're building the house.
Yep. You'll have to do a little spot check on it for me. But just when you're looking at it from the entry, so you walk in, turn right, you're going to look at it. It'll be on the right of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Just have a bit of a peek around. See if
I certainly will.
Something. Yeah.
And so this theory, the Orion mystery, I think it's pretty solid. But because we can do a lot with mathematical models and the stars these days, so we can wind back the clock to see where the stars were.
To see what
we can
was
go
happening. Yep.
all the way with incredible precision, and we can go all the way in the future as well. Like we can get those star maps.
Yeah. You can do it on your phone.
Yeah, you can do it on your phone, 100%.
Yeah.
But the shafts that come out of the King's Pyramid, two out of the King's Pyramid, two out of the Queen's Pyramid, Chamber. That although they don't penetrate to the outside, which we don't understand why they don't penetrate.
The Queen's ones don't.
Yeah, because if they're ventilation shafts, why
are
they not ventilating?
Outside? Yeah, no, doesn't make any sense.
And the other thing is people
What
say...
does that mean though? Kings, kings and queens. I'm getting bogged down on the kings and queens thing.
Okay.
Right? It's just,
let me tell you. The only reason they call the king's chamber is because that Mamoon, the first guy that worked his way in there, because he was of like Persia or somewhere around there, I don't know, in the Middle East, they typically had men's rooms or funerary complexes, I don't know, one or the other, had flat roofs, and females had like architraves, like an A-frame roof.
yes.
And that's why they called it the king's chamber and the queen's chamber, because the king's chamber had a flat roof and the queen's chamber had an architrave.
Correct. It's not based off size. Like
it's not based on size. There's no other reason. It's just a way to depict. We could have called them room A and room B, but that's just the way.
If you look at the king's chamber as a sort of what it is actually, which is the granite beams on top of each other with the two crossing at the top, you've sort of got your A-frame at the top of the king's chamber in a way.
Yes, I'm just saying.
Can't see it from in there. Can't see it from in there.
Yeah,
you wouldn't be able to. You wouldn't be able to tell
because they only found those chambers above the king's chamber.
So nuts.
Hundreds. They only found those recently, like 150 years ago, I think. Davidson found them, and if you go up there,
things up there, yeah.
If you go up there, and they're the massive granite blocks I'm talking about. So the king's chamber sits approximately, I'm going to guess, but it's at least 70 meters above ground level, at least. It's at least halfway up the pyramid. I'm just guessing. You had to get those 100-ton granite blocks. I said that you needed an angle of 1.25 degrees and 900 men pulling it.
Blokes. Yeah.
You have to get that up 70 meters and then place it perfectly. It's not just the king's chamber that has them. It's the grand gallery. And they are precisely placed perfectly. If you look at the grand gallery, it has a perfect angle of 26.5 degrees, which is also the angle of the descending passage and the ascending passage. And there's some reason for that. There's some people have some reasons for it. And the point is that none of the pyramid is done by accident. And that's what's fascinating. It's perfectly north within a third of a single degree, which is apparently one of the most accurate buildings pointing north that we've got going. As we've talked about before, but it's dimensions.
Being like a pyramid, though, wouldn't that mean that it's pointing really good west, east, and south? Yes,
exactly.
As well?
It's a compass.
Yeah,
not just north. It's compass.
It's a smart tool.
Now these shafts if you imagine the Queen's chamber shafts go all the way to the external of the pyramids, they point outwards.
Sure.
They, at 2,450 BC, they point precisely at, I don't know much about astronomy, but it points precisely at the North Star of the day, which isn't Polaris that we have. It's a different one because the Earth.
One.
But they had a North Star
back then. Yep.
They venerate. I think it's Sirius. I don't know. It's one of the most. I think it's one of the most. It's perfectly north, so that when the stars move, all the stars move in the sky except for this one star that always stays stationary. And we don't always have a North Star that doesn't move, but at that epoch we did, and right now we have one that's decent as well. That you can see. Have you ever seen those time-lapse star photography where you see all the stars move and one doesn't move? Now that's Polaris, but there was another star because of the wobble of the Earth around that time. There was Sirius. And there's also one of the shafts points directly to the brightest and lowest star in the Orion belt, which is in the pyramid text is a star that they venerate. Mm-hmm. And it's actually the star that the pharaoh is supposed to become in the night sky.
Oh, good one. Good one.
So it's called the one that doesn't Osiris.
Move. How does that work though with like previous pharaohs? Because surely they would have become the North Star as well, right?
Well, this isn't the North Star because it's called what do they call it? Anyway, it's called Osiris Orion. It's like this is the transition from being a human to a god.
Right. It's probably just a meeting point. And then they can go off and do godly stuff from there. Right.
And the other two shafts point precisely are the venerated stars. I don't know much about it.
Chuck them up there.
Yep. But because over a period of a very long period of time. I think it's called the great year, or the precession of the equinoxes. The year takes 26,000 years to do this complete cycle, but we can wind back the clock. We're using computer algorithms. We can figure out whatever we want. These are all locked on those stars at 2,450 BC, which is either the fucking craziest coincidence
or
of all time. Like, this is what I mean about, you start little things that they start doing. You think, well, I mean, how many things can be an accident? So I don't like this at all, but we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
The dimensions of the pyramid, the Great Pyramid, encode the dimensions of the Earth.
Yeah.
In that the height times a certain ratio that is actually derived. I mentioned the Great Year, the precession of the equinoxes. It's derived that the number, the scale of it is derived from that Great Year. I don't fully understand that. I don't really know it in and out. It made sense to me when I was reading it. But anyway, the height of the Great Pyramid, is the polar radius of the Earth. So if you take the height of 146 meters, 146.6, times it by 43,600, I think it is, you get the polar radius of the Earth. If you take the perimeter of the pyramid and times it by 43,600, you get the equatorial circumference of the Earth.
Mm.
Yes, it could be a coincidence, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that Egypt, not only Egypt, but the ancients knew of the precession of the equinox, and that they understood the time scale.
And why would you need to know this?
Because it's the only reference point it's the only way it's like a time machine. You can point back to previous times using the stars. And we even do it right now. So the Hoover Dam has a star map encoded into it that shows when it was built.
Interesting.
So if you understand precession and you understand astronomy, and you go 10,000 years in the future and there's nothing left but the Hoover Dam's there, and you have a look at it and you realize, hey, they're talking to us. They're telling us when it was built.
Yeah, and then there we go. Yeah, well, good, bloody hell of a lot of good that's done. Great. And we know the date of this. Great. Thanks for the info. We're doing the same thing, like to the pyramids. We're going like, what? What's the circumference times? Yeah, is what? Yeah, sure. Like, now what? Now we know. Great.
Well, John Anthony West's point is the Egyptians had philosophy, astronomy, mathematics, everything merged into one discipline, that they didn't do one thing without doing another. We might put these astronomical measurements into the Hoover Dam because it's fun, because the architect got a kick.
Yes.
But what you'll find is that everything merges together. So when they encode pi and phi in the dimensions of the pyramid, which we spoke about last week, they did it not necessarily to encode information. Some things they may have been encoding information for a future use, but I think they just did it because their disciplines all merge together. So they don't do architecture without mathematics. They don't do mathematics without religion. They don't do religion without
it's all
philosophy.
one thing.
It's all one thing. So that's just how they do it.
And space and the stars. I mean, a lot of cultures have done it, but space and the stars is a really good sort of reference to the afterlife, if you like, in that it's infinite, right? The infinite nature of space and the everlasting life thing kind of goes hand in hand.
It does.
And I've always said that, like, you didn't have a television or the internet back then, so the best show you're going to get on Earth is probably the night sky, right? So it's natural that it would be venerated in such a way because...
And our connection with space seems to have been lost.
Yeah, or diminished. Yeah.
When was the last time you looked up at the night sky?
Oh, I think that it's I think that living in a city, even though this is like pretty small city, you're just getting less. You're getting less of it. You're just getting less of it, and it does remove that connection. You tend to get more sort of bogged down in the day-to-day stuff. If you could go out to a beautiful night sky, I mean, you can. They're happening. They're just not as good as they could be, right? It is happening outside right now if you want to go out and have a look. But I think, you'd get a lot from being out somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
Certainly. And I want altitude. I don't just want to be out away from light pollution. I want altitude. I want to see, I know that they didn't necessarily have that in Egypt, but because I'm so lacking of a beautiful night sky, I've been so hard done by. I want to go all the way. I want to go to like an observatory that's added.
Yeah, like Chile or something. Yep. Yeah. But here's what we can do, right? Because you're going to Egypt, you're going to the Great Pyramid, you're going to set foot in some pretty crazy places, right? And you might even get a night sky while you're there, right? But we're going to need people to turn the lights off because light pollution. You're going to get a hell of a lot of light pollution in your what is now Cairo, I guess. You know what I mean? You don't get to step back in time the same way as, imagine experiencing the Giza pyramids at night and it's popping off stars-wise, like there's nothing going on. There's no light pollution. That would make sense, right?
It would be amazing. It would be amazing. It would really enhance the experience.
Yeah.
I understand that one thing that John Anthony West's guide to Egypt that I'm reading at the moment says that prepare yourself for like a hustle and bustle inside the Great Pyramid because there's a lot of people coming and going. And he says that I think a lot of people, it's a bit triggering to some people to be in such you have this image of it that you're going into this sacred space and it's gonna be kind of like quiet and peaceful and beautiful. Sure. But there's just people always constantly coming and going, and it's maybe it's a bit alcohol-y. It's a popular spot.
Yep.
And even Graham Hancock was saying that he was lucky enough to spend a few moments alone in the King's chamber.
Just some moments, yeah.
Just a couple of moments, and speaks really highly of them. Yeah, very unscientific, but he feels like it was speaking to him. But he's also so into this stuff.
Yeah.
That he was probably just having a minor religious experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's possible too. And Napoleon went in there and apparently had a good time.
Well, he had a horrible time. He came out white as a ghost. He spent a night in there, and he said he'll never speak of it again.
That sounds like an urban legend, though, doesn't it?
Apparently, it's fairly legit. It does sound like an urban legend. I've read somewhere
he never spoke of it again. That's convenient.
They say his officers said he was visibly shaken. That's the and that he didn't speak of it. But the fact he never spoke of it again makes me kind of think that, like, if something was that powerful, it had that much of an impact.
Well, you imagine you're there. It's bloody, it's the 15th century, 16th century, and you're inside the thing. And I'm just imagining the scale again, and I'm probably getting it wrong again.
And Napoleon was like 1800s, so the beginning of the 19th century.
Right.
And he was the first one to really bring Egypt back into the spotlight, because France had this weird obsession with they call it Egyptomania that it kind of went through.
Yeah, we talked about it last week, right?
Yeah.
But Egyptomania, like the Beatles, they got really into it, started putting sphinxes everywhere, right?
Started stealing all their shit.
Yeah, steal their shit, bring it back. So what do we know? What do we think the robber got out of the tunnel? What did he get?
Which one? The 8th century?
The one that
century.
About 800 AD.
Apparently got nothing. There was nothing in there.
Yeah, nothing there.
And he was spewing. It was just that granite sarcophagus.
Couldn't get it out.
The door's not big enough. That's probably the only reason why that's the only thing remaining.
Yeah, that's true.
But also those granite plugs haven't been moved. We don't know when they were inserted. But you're not getting much out of that robber's passage. That tunnel.
No, it's not big enough. Right. Yeah, it's crazy that we're in 2023. They've been having a lot of archaeological stuff happen there. They still haven't opened up the main entry. Is that normal?
I think you can go through it. They just use the other entry, I believe. I think you
can go through it?
Yeah. I don't know if you can, sorry, but they know it's there because they just went up the descending passage and they know where it is. So I think I don't know. I'll tell you.
Yeah, okay.
I'll tell you when I go there.
Let us know. Well, that is exciting.
And I'm also looking forward to, in the Cairo Museum,
That'll be a good spot. Yep.
there's this statue of Sephirin or something like that.
Is this one, would it be made out of, what would it be made out of?
It's made out of diorite, one of the hardest stones known to man.
Yep, okay. Diorite, yep.
Apparently it is impossible to work.
Yeah. On the hardness scale, it's up there with granite.
It's up there with granite. Now, have a look at, just go Khafre statue.
I think I've seen this one. Khafre. Yeah, oh yeah. Love this guy.
This is a super famous one. This is probably...
Yeah, he sort of looks a bit like green if you were, he looks a bit green.
Now, look at the face. So they say that they attribute Sephirin or Khafre to the Sphinx. And so a lot of the people say, I say a lot of things are done just on circumstantial evidence. A lot of people say that this face looks like the Sphinx face.
Yep, okay.
And so I've just been told to have a look and decide for myself. So I'm looking forward to doing that.
Okay, yep. Did John Anthony West tell you to have a look and decide for yourself?
Yes.
Okay. Did he give any other potential sort of solutions to this?
Solutions, no. This statue was found upside down.
This is fantastic. It's got the bird around the back of the head as well.
It does. And that's the idea that, fuck me, like birds typically depict the spirit, the soul, if you will. And he's integrated with the brain of the human. So this is the God King type symbolism,
Man
I believe.
And God. Yep. Is he sitting on a throne as well, right? Sitting on a throne. Throne's got little chips taken out of one side of it, like before. People are having a bit of a chip away, you reckon?
Well, as I said, it was found upside down in the Valley Temple when it was hidden in. This is one of the greatest works of art in human history.
Yeah.
Apparently, in terms of the way it's absolutely
proportions.
Stunning. Yes.
Yep.
Apparently, is regarded as one of the finest statues of all time, and it was upside down in the Valley Temple, and they don't know why. They think that when they were protecting it, some of the the priests or people that venerated this site were worried about invaders coming and destroying the statues, and that they stashed it as a way of protecting it.
Yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense, but it's all circumstantial. They don't know why it was found.
If you're worried about something getting destroyed, though, why are you stashing it upside down, chucking it on its head?
I think it's so bloody heavy that you don't know who did it and when, and it was placed in a certain place. I think they're just trying to get it out of sight, so they're just pushing it. Who knows?
But that's the only thing that's saying that it's the Sphinx. That's how they've attributed it to it.
That's one of the large. Yeah. The other thing is there's this tiny. There's a tiny. I think one of the stones that was used somewhere has
right. It's got his name on it.
It's got his name on it, but there's nothing directly. And so that shows. I think that stone was used from the quarry that was when he was the pharaoh. So they have made the attribution.
How they do that. Yeah. Fair enough.
Looking forward to seeing the Sphinx, the Sphinx enclosure. Just having a look at that water erosion.
Yep, going to have a rundown. Yep.
That's a fascinating story.
Yep.
If anyone, this is probably the smoking gun. At least John Anthony West claims it's the smoking gun because a geologist looks at this stone and says that...
Spends 1 second with it. Yeah.
1 second with it. If you take a geologist and show them the rock formation...
Yeah.
It had to have sustained at least 1,000 years of heavy rain.
Which means it must have been there to get rained on.
Must have been there to get rained on. And there hasn't been heavy rain in that part of the world if you also talk to a climate scientist or someone who knows in the last 9,000 years. Because before that, Egypt was quite a lush, I don't want to say tropical, but relatively lush. Now it's a desert. So you take a geologist there and they say this is at least saying 1,000 years of water erosion. And then you take into the fact that the Sphinx enclosure and the Sphinx has actually been covered in sand for thousands of years. If you look at all the people that have come across it.
Head out of the sand.
Yeah, depictions of it is just the head out of the sand. And so it
would have been protected for a long time
from water erosion. So they think that it may have only been exposed for 500 to 1,000 years alone. And it was dead dry. So how do you explain massive water erosion? So this is the smoking gun, or it's claimed to be.
This is something I said to you the other day, is that anything that is based off the information from before Gobekli is irrelevant now. Whether if they've just said, look, the reason why we're saying it was this old is because there weren't people building stuff before this, then we can say, nah, that's actually not true anymore. We know that there was a 8,000-year-old place that was getting worked on, so we know that we can push the timeline back.
No, you're absolutely
8,000 BC. So we go back 10,000 years now. You know what I'm saying?
You are absolutely correct, but I just want to state it in a different way. The comeback from mainstream Egyptologists to John Anthony West's argument or point, he said, hey, look at this. Like, what is going on here? He's just pointing at something, going, explain this. And they say, oh, okay. And so the assertion is, and they don't dispute the assertion that it would have had to have been there from 8,000, 9,000 years ago to actually sustain the kind of water erosion that it is exhibiting. They say, oh, good story. Where is the civilization that could have possibly have produced this? Because we don't have any records of any civilization beyond Sumeria, which was around 4,000 BC, 6,000 years ago. So they laugh it off, saying, "Oh, yeah, good one, good fact you have there."
Sieves, buddy.
Yeah, they basically say, "Good fact. Where's the circumstantial evidence?"
Graham Hancock's comeback is lost, sieve, bro, lost.
And so now when you come across Gobekli Tepe, which a lot of people wouldn't know about, it is a fact that there was a civilization that created a humongous, what do you call it, monolithic
temple
what do they
complex?
Call it? A huge temple complex. We've only excavated a very small part of it, and it is dated to when it was infilled. It is categorically dated.
Infill is dated, yes.
The infill, so it was at least there 10,000 years ago.
To be filled in.
Min. So that has so if you put this in scale, is it 10,000? I wonder if it's 10,000 BC or 10,000 years ago. I think it's 10,000.
And one of the only reasons we know about it, just quickly, is because they did infill it. If they didn't and it was exposed, then just like the Sphinx, like it benefited from being covered.
So Gobekli Tepe is older to Khufu that built the Great Pyramid than Khufu's pyramid is to us.
No way.
Yeah, so Khufu's pyramid was only 4,500. Khufu's pyramid's 4,500 years ago.
Yeah.
Now Gobekli Tepe is 10,000 years ago.
Yeah, right. We got a problem. We do have a problem, don't we?
So
that's a problem.
It's a huge amount of time. So now that the whole argument, the big comeback was, where's the civilization that could have possibly created this? You have a civilization 10,000 years ago that wasn't far away, that did something equally as impressive. I mean, it's not as big. The Sphinx is the biggest single stone statue in the world.
Well, it's carved out of the rock, right?
It's carved out of the bedrock. Yeah. So therefore one piece.
Pretty hard to date. And if I was coming along there and went, wow, look at this thing, let's build here. That's cool. Wouldn't you?
Well, that's sort of the interesting thing. If you start taking that timeline, say you've got, let's just say the Sphinx is, let's just say it's 10,000 years old. Let's just slap the same. Let's just
give it Gobekli status.
Let's just give it Gobekli status. And also where the Valley Temple next to it with its huge, it's a completely different style of architecture to the pyramids, the Giza pyramids, which are just next door. They're all next door. They're all one complex. Yep. The Valley Temple and which is just, I can't wait to go into that. I just can't wait. Are massive blocks, but they didn't come from very far away. They came from the Sphinx enclosure. So as we
just
said,
across just a stone's throw.
Just literally, they just could have just rolled them there.
Yep.
So the Sphinx enclosures, the Sphinx is one body of rock, and they carved out all the rock either side of it. All those
the
rocks.
enclosure. Yep.
Yeah, the enclosure, that's been – so therefore, if the Sphinx is 10,000 years old, the Valley Temple is the same date because it's made out of the material that the Sphinx was carved out of.
So this is the snowball that the guys who are like mainstream Egyptologists don't like. This is the snowball effect where it's like, the Sphinx is older, well then the Valley Temple's older as well because they use that to build that, and it's a slippery slope, isn't it?
It is slippery, but let's stop the slide because I don't think the pyramids, from what I know other people know more about this. Not only more insane people than myself are saying that the pyramids are older than this. I think the pyramids date perfectly to 2450 BC. I've got no argument personally with that.
Yep.
Whereas some people say it's built older. We don't know how they did it. We have no fucking clue how they did it. We probably couldn't. Well, we could do it now, but the amount of resources we would have to sink into it is just ludicrous, and it would take far longer than the 20 years they said it took to build the Great Pyramid.
80?
Mate, we can't build the light rail that goes to the airport. The Ellenbrook line was promised over 20 years ago. I know that we're not sinking all over. It's just bullshit. We couldn't.
Yeah, but if we'd attributed our religious and otherwise cultural success to the light rail, then I'm sure it would have happened. If we all pulled together as one, we all had this one light rail idea together.
This is what I find
we would
more.
have got it done.
But this is also what I find more impressive about the Egyptian civilization is that they did manage to mobilize the whole population for one goal. Like, what a powerful – not only did they have –
But I doubt they would have even to get light rail going. Even if they had full support of everybody in the community, they had everybody on board with the light rail thing, they probably gave it a crack. They were probably doing that at the end. It probably caused their civilization to collapse. We don't know. There's still a lot of question marks.
There are so many question marks. I can't remember what I was talking about. What was I talking about? Getting excited about something.
Oh, you were talking about the Valley Temple because
the Valley Temple.
We were talking about the Valley Temple.
Okay, now the other one, and the Valley Temple's a lot lower as well. That was covered by sand for a long time. We only found that not long ago.
Is that right?
Yeah, when I say not long ago, but the Sphinx was covered up to its head. The Valley Temple sits lower than the Sphinx, or it's adjacent to and lower than.
What a piss off for the Egyptologists who are like, fuck, there's stuff under here. Shit.
And then there's this other temple that is the same architecture as. So let's just say now let's just spitball. So we're saying that the Valley Temple is 10,000 years old because the Sphinx is 10,000 years old and it's just nearby. There's this ruin, this temple called the Osirion, which is near Luxor. I'll be visiting this one as well. This is also the same construction architectural style as the Valley Temple, and it also sits a lot lower than the surrounding temples. The Osirion is given credit to Seti I, who's a pharaoh in, I think, the Middle Kingdom or something, who did a big complex next to it. But his
Seti
complex,
the First, is it?
Seti the First, yes.
That was Ramses II's dad.
I think you're right.
Ramses II it was the ultimate pharaoh. They used to think that if he died, it was GG for the Civ.
Really?
But yeah, go on.
I know he was a big one. So Seti I was building some, construction, and it's one of the. I think it's the only one that goes that is in an L shape. And what happened is that the theory is, John Anthony West's theory is that he was doing his construction his temple down the way, and then he uncovered the Osirion, which sits a lot lower, was buried, and then he built his structure to go off to the left because he didn't want to disturb this one, because there's no other structure that does this left turn like this. And the Osirion's a lot lower, again, like the Valley Temple. Same construction methods, same kind of architectural styles. Right now it's filled up with water in the bottom of it so I don't think I'll be able to go into it. But because it's so low in the water table, it sort of fills up because it sits so low. But that's attributed to SETI 1. But it's also because they can't date these things. They don't understand. So what I'm saying is there's potential, and there's some other really cool ones, but there's potential for 2 different or multiple different.
How do they get all this shit done? Like SETI, the first reign was either 11 or 15 years. That's what they're saying. Estimated that it was 15 years. How much can you get done in 15 years? Like, even if you had full public support to just get your shit done. I mean, what could you actually get done? I mean, 15, that's not a long time.
It's not long. It's like going to school.
Yeah. It's like just the school part and then you're done.
Well, you gotta motivate. You got to remember that they're trying to get this guy to immortality. So he'd better be working because everyone else is for him. Yeah, they want you to get there.
So, true. I just had a look at SETI the first Wikipedia page, which I'm sure he would have loved if it existed. Like that he would have loved to know that it exists. But it says here under children, Tia, Ramesses II, the big boy I mentioned earlier, and Henutmir, and then and then it says question mark afterwards, which I assume means, I don't know, there could be more, right? But if you go to Ramesses II, his son, it says children, 88 to 103 children.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 7 ladies. That's how much is that per lady? 103 divided by 7.
Mate, their job was just to breed. Those
Jesus
women were doing
Christ.
1 a year.
For how long? Oh my God. Anyway, the numbers are bad. So 88 to 103 kids for Ramesses. I think I can see how scared he made the world. Like, look, if I'm gone, you're going to need one of these 110 kids. And then there's one who will take over. There you go.
Yeah, there must be a few politics involved. Man, the Temple of SETI 1 at Abydos looked pretty cool.
Yes, I was having a look at that earlier. Again, 11 years. How much can you get done in 11 to 15 years? Well, the Temple of SETI at Abydos is pretty fucking rad. The stairs look brand new. They must be. Everything else looks pretty weathered.
Yeah, well, they do some repair works. And
restoration and
they
stuff.
do some restorations, which
how do you
I'm going to be
feel about
asking
that?
questions. I don't actually feel that good about it because I'd actually prefer just to see it. Look, I
Whatever
want
remains,
to.
right?
Yeah, it's tough because I want to see it as it was, and maybe they can impress me, so I get the feeling of a bit more of a connection with the site itself. So I feel like I was perhaps an Egyptian of the time or something.
Sure, it's a catch-22, isn't it? You want to see as much as you can, but you also don't want to be like. You don't want to have any interpretation.
No, I want them to be faithful. I only want them to do it to be when they're 100% sure they're being faithful to the design and the intention.
Yeah, and some of these pictures of SETI's other temple, this is the one in Luxor, either look like they've been restored or immaculately preserved. And just looking at the top section, I should probably just send you this picture. They look brand new up there. I'll put it in pictures.
Yeah.
They look brand new. The sort of crossbeam, I'll call it, at the very top with the hieroglyphs that are on top of these pillars. I'm looking at that. They look brand new. And then underneath it, the back wall, that looks old. Like the actual wall behind it.
Yeah, okay.
It'd be interesting to hear what you come back with that one in regards to how you meant to tell what's been restored. I mean, it might be bloody obvious. Who knows? But those stairs look brand spanking.
Yeah, but what I'm looking forward to is seeing. I'm trying to find a photo of it, but the Osirion sits behind it. It's lower and of completely different architectural style. So
how do you spell this? Because I want to see this Osirion. What is it?
It's Osirion. And you know, he said the Temple of SETI 1 looks new. This sits out the back of it.
Yeah, this is out the back. And what did you say about the left turn thing?
You can see if you get an
very
overview.
low, isn't it?
It's very low. It's like you would have had to dig that out. Right. Yeah, there's a bunch of water. So, and if you look at an overview of the Temple of SETI 1 and the Osirion, you can see that it goes off to the Osirion's like this smaller little sort of unit at the back that's got its own sort of walkway and entry to it. But then his temple, as he was building backwards, the theory goes that he uncovered this work, and instead of building over it, he built sideways, like an L shape. It's one of the, I believe I don't want to say it's the only temple they have that goes in an L shape, but it's very uncommon.
And you think he found the one below in the construction process and went, fuck.
Yeah, that's John Anthony West's view.
Yeah, because of
what I love about it is I'm all on board with the Valley Temple being potentially older, because I'm on board with the Sphinx being older. I'm on board with the Valley Temple being older. I'm on board with this being older because it's the same architectural style as the Valley Temple. And the way I want to see how it fits in with the other temple. I want to get a feel for it and look at it. I want to go to one, go to the back and be like, man, was this built by the same guy at the same time? Like, why would you build this bunker out the back completely different from the temple at the front?
Yeah, I got a feeling you're going to come back more confused than ever.
Oh, there'll be no answers. There'll certainly be no answers. And I'm looking forward to the West Bank in Luxor, where all the actual tombs of pharaohs.
Oh, you're going there as well.
Going there. That's because, the Temple of Man in Luxor and Karnak Temple, they're sort of next to each other. They're incredible, incredible sites.
Yes.
Can't wait for that. So Schwaller de Lubix is really famous for the Temple of Man and has made some big calls about what that...
This is the one that's shaped like a man?
Yes. Well, it's only shaped like a man if you have his kind of imagination. If you just look at it and asked anyone else and you didn't say that, you'd say, what's it look like? No one's going to say it looks like a man.
Yeah, I remember this episode of Magical Egypt. Yeah.
So he studied this. He is a Frenchman who studied this temple for 15 years.
Yeah.
And he's released books on it. He's measured everything a million times with so much precision.
Sure.
He has studied this thing inside and out. Apparently his text, so this is he is the one that has made some claims. There was one line in his text that noted that it looks like water erosion on the enclosure of the Sphinx. It was one line, and John Anthony West had a look at that and goes, you know what? There is, and Schwaller de Lubix pointed out that there is some sites in Egypt that seem to have water erosion, and he just question marked it just a what the fuck. Like, no, he didn't have geologists. This was 100 years ago. It was like I think it was the 50s, 40s and 50s. I think he did it.
Yeah, interesting.
And he made that comment, and John Anthony West goes, you know what? That does look unusual. I'm going to ask a geologist. The geologist took one look at it.
Yep. Hello.
Hello. Well, firstly, he took a picture of the Sphinx and cut off the head and showed erosion patterns on the body of the Sphinx. And he asked some geologist, this is his story. He goes, oh, so what do you think, caused this just at a glance and whatever, asked him, and it was water erosion.
Like thousands of years of rainfall.
Yeah. He took the top layer off the Sphinx, and the guy was like, oh shit. And he wouldn't put it in writing. And he's like, man, the evidence should be, this is his story. It's one anecdotal story, but the evidence should be the evidence. See, Luff agrees.
He gets it.
Shouldn't it, Luff? Yeah, he's looking at me funny. So that's some of the stuff I've been banging on about. I'm looking forward to the pyramid text in the Pyramid of Unas. We've spoken about that on another episode.
What, you're going to see that?
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, that's just next door to the Saqqara. It's actually like 50 meters away.
Yeah, you can see one from the other. Yeah. Is that the Red Pyramid?
No, the Dashur pyramids, the Bent Pyramid and the Red Pyramid. I think I'm going to those. I'm not 100% sure, and I'll be
They're
gutted.
quite big.
They're big. I'll be gutted if I don't.
And it's a classic pyramid too. You'll get that really nice. It's one of the nicer looking ones.
Yeah, it is, because a lot of them are just heaps of rubble because the pyramid building went backwards.
Yeah, we talked about that before. Yeah.
So all the oldest ones look the newest. The oldest ones look the best because their construction methods were incredible.
The best. Yeah.
And then as they go on, their construction methods get poorer and more crude, and they start resorting to
the I used to think that was pretty unbelievable.
Oh, it's fact. It's
No, but it sounds
absolute.
pretty believable. I mean, have you ever heard someone usually over the age of 50 say they don't make things like they used to?
Yeah.
Like your phone, incredible as it is as a piece of technology, incredible as it is, you're not going to use it in 6 years, right? It's gone.
Yeah.
You've got a different one. It doesn't last at all. So construction techniques getting shittier over time kind of makes sense to me now, in that like we're doing it now in the 23rd century, 21st century. It's amazing.
Sorry, it just came to my mind.
I nearly gave it away there that I'm a time traveler from the 23rd century, and that I should just shut up now, because should I divulge any more, it's going to create some sort of schism in time that I don't know if we're going to be able to come out the other side of. So look, 21st century, a bit of a slip of the dick or whatever you call it. Yeah.
The Temple of Seti I in Abydos that we were talking about that abuts the Osirion.
Yeah, that one.
That's also the one with, you would have seen, I don't like these knee-jerk conspiracy type things where it's just like, look at that. Like, this is the one with the hieroglyph of the thing that looks like the helicopter, the airplane, the tank.
Oh no!
Yeah.
So what are they?
I don't know what they are, but I don't like them because they might look unusual, but it's one instance. It's not like, I like seeing courses of conduct, things corroborating themselves.
If we know what hieroglyphs are, can we read it?
Though I don't think they come up. They're not hieroglyphs. They're not traditional hieroglyphs.
They're pictographs or something.
Yeah, and it is unusual because when you said time traveler, it reminded me of this.
Yep.
And it's cool. Like, I like it. But
isn't there someone who's actually done some research on the helicopter thing, not on the side of helicopters, so that we can get like some good answers on that?
I don't know. And for anyone that doesn't know, it's a side-on profile of like what looks like to be a little bubbly aircraft. I mean, it looks like pretty shit aircraft to me.
Well, it looks like a few. On the top left, you have like the helicopter, what they call a helicopter.
That looks pretty good.
Which looks like a Vietnam era helicopter, going into some Creedence Clearwater Revival. Then to the right of that, you've got something that looks like a ocean liner sort of boat.
Yeah, with
and
a
then
turret.
Underneath that, you've got straight up Star Trek spaceship.
That one's the best one.
It is the best one.
That's the best one. The helicopter for me, I don't know why there's this carve out just below the middle rotor blade. There's like a little block. That to me makes it, why would you have a helicopter?
Why would you be obscuring this?
Yeah, that shouldn't be there. Like, that should be, even give me some landing gear on that thing. It could be like a hole, when you have like a hole in a side of a helicopter and you typically have a little minigunner and Rambo sticking out of there. Yeah, I could buy that. And then the tanky boaty thing, that could be anything really.
Yeah. I don't know what, because I don't know what anyone who's looked at these have actually said, this is what we think it is. Because, from a current perspective, if you looked at this, if this was made yesterday, you'd be like, helicopter, boat, UFO thing, if it was made yesterday. And you got a butterfly with his knives and forks set on the left-hand side there. He's got a little fork. Look, I don't know. But it also reminds me of this one. If you type into your Google, Lord Pakal. Lord Pakal is spelled Pakal. And if you look at his sarcophagus, if you find something that just shows his sarcophagus, this is the classic.
Pakal.
Yeah, Lord Pakal. He was a Mayan, I think he was Mayan. Yeah, Mayan lord. This is his sarcophagus, right? So if you have a look at that engraving, can you see that? He's like sitting on a chair. He's got something up his nose. He's got a little foot thing for his pedal. And this is your Eric von Daniken classic Ancient Aliens thing, because at the very bottom, you've got a rocket, some sort of like a flame coming out the bottom, like a dragon coming out the bottom. And the idea is that he's, propulsing himself to space. He'll return in a couple of 25,000 years or something, because he'll go speed of light there, speed of light back, I assume, because that's how quick these guys like to travel. And then he'll be back tomorrow, probably, likely tomorrow after this episode came out. But people have had a crack at like colorizing it to try and like get the shapes out of it, the actual important shapes. But it is a cool image of old mate. I think it's Lord
There's a lot
Pakal's
going
trip
on.
to the stars is somewhere in there, which is interesting. It's just very cool.
It is very cool.
It's like your helicopter thing.
Yeah. I mean, is he just going on a massive?
Could be just him having a bath. We don't know.
Is he about to have an ayahuasca trip?
Yeah, quite possibly. To go meet his maker. You know, this was his sarcophagus top, like his little the lid. It's his lid, so it's obviously important to him. Whatever's on there is important to him, right?
I reckon you do those color by numbers or paint by numbers type things. I reckon this would be a cool one. It's really fun. My wife has a coloring book that she's only used like twice, but it's got all these really trippy like patterns, and you just color it as you see fit. And it's supposed to be a mindfulness thing where if you just want to chill out and like,
that's nice.
It's like coloring for adults.
Yeah, love it.
I reckon this would make a really good one.
Yeah, well, you can see someone's had a crack at it there. Mayan astronaut, that one there. The one where he's all red. Have you seen that one? But have a check of Pakal out. He's a good dude. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, okay. I want to send you this one because it's super trippy. Can I just copy image and just like bang it in, or is it not going to look like that? Oh, I did, yeah.
Yeah, you can.
This is another rendition of it.
Fantastic. Yeah, this is sort of your DMT inspired one.
Yeah.
Pseudo-archaeology. Pakal's tomb has been the subject of ancient astronaut speculation since its appearance in Erich von Daniken's 1968 bestseller Chariots of the Gods? ? Von Daniken reproduced a drawing of the sarcophagus lid, though incorrectly labeling it as being from Copan. So it's not from Copan, which is an archaeological site, and compared Pakal's nose to that of a Project Mercury astronaut in the 1960s. He interpreted drawings underneath Pakal as rockets and offered the sarcophagus lid as possible evidence of an extraterrestrial influence on the ancient Maya.
What a fascinating culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love that the Olmecs are the civilization before the Maya, and they just called them the Olmecs, but they knew nothing about them.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So what do we know about the Olmecs?
Fuck all.
Really?
Yeah.
I've seen some of the giant stone heads, right?
Yeah, they're definitely, they're the Olmec ones I'm thinking of. I don't know much about it. I don't know much about it at all, but they have a certain look about them, and they all look very African? Was it? The Olmec heads?
Earliest known Mesoamerican civilization.
Yeah, so it's the earliest known. And see the big thick lips on them?
Yeah.
And what's fascinating, they all have these helmets. Nearly all of them, apparently there's like one or two examples that don't have them, of these Olmec heads all have this fucking nutty helmet on them. What the hell is that?
Interesting. But they're pretty young in that. Dates. This is what's on the Wikipedia anyway. 16th century BCE to the 4th century BCE.
Oh, really? Do they know? Is that fact? Like, how do they know how old they are? I suppose you could be dating the material again. You could be dating them, but you're only dating the material around it, not when the stone was made. Because the Olmecs were old. Well,
this is how they date them. The Olmecs flourished during Mesoamerica's formative period, dating from as early as 1500 BCE to about 400 BCE. Pre-Olmec cultures had flourished since 2500 BCE. But by 1600 to 1500 BCE, early Olmec culture had emerged, centered on San Lorenzo Tenochtitlan, which is the big one, right?
I think they inherited the calendar from the Olmecs, but that would suggest that there was a link between the two. I thought that they were completely separate, and they just knew of them by the things they left behind.
Possibly.
I don't know.
But the Aztecs, when were they around?
I think they were around with them. They were recent. Well, they were wiped out. They weren't around long. They were only a couple hundred years.
Post-classic period, 1300 to 1521.
And then the Spanish just whipped them. That's an interesting culture as well. I want to get into that one day, but I'm going to save it for another day.
Not for the Egypt special.
Yeah, not for the Egypt special. But yeah, look at on the Olmec heads. Their lips are very thick. Like it's a very. A lot of people have commented.
Yeah,
before
so it sort of
that,
gives cred to more of that sort of idea that it was a
and the
quite
nose.
the humans had spread further than initially known.
Yeah, I think people are going back to the drawing board a little bit because there's a lot of things that don't add up.
Graham Hancock said that the sieve that went extinct, the lost sieve, was a worldwide thing. It wasn't. They weren't just set up in a couple of cities. They were everywhere.
I've heard that.
A global sieve.
But it also doesn't mean not everyone was a part of it. He's also of the view that there could be a global civ, but there's also at the same time living like we live with hunter-gatherer tribes now. Like would you say Western society, or I don't know how to say, I'm trying to pick the biggest cohort of people. Like you'd have to go with like I guess Asian society really if you're going with the biggest cohort. But I don't know if its influence is as dominant as the Western civilized.
Sure, don't know.
Don't know.
Fair enough.
It's much of a muchness, really. But what I'm saying is, if there was some kind of catastrophe, which is what sort of Graham Hancock, that's where he goes with all this. Say that right now there was some kind of catastrophe. I can't look after myself. I'm going to last firstly, there's about 3 days of food in this city. If you cut off the supply,
we're gone.
We are just in so much trouble.
So much trouble.
I'm trying to grow some snow peas at the moment. It's not going so well.
Shit, you're fucked then. If you can't get those, it could be life and death. Those snow peas, whether or not they come out the other side, is potentially life and death.
I've got no hunting skills.
No. And this is now, when we're at the height of our technological dominance. Right now, right? Whereas back then, you'd be more prepared for this because your dad would have told you the stories about the serpent in the sky who came down ages ago and wiped everybody out, and everyone had to be really strong, otherwise they died. Nowadays, it's like, my phone's not charging. What the fuck?
What is going to survive? What will be left of what is going to be left in 10,000 years if we just stop?
Rushmore, apparently. Rushmore. Yeah,
okay,
Rushmore.
Stone. We'll if I made a steel cube,
nothing.
Gone. So that just gets eaten up. That just corrodes. Yeah. That's gone.
Yeah.
So is it? So that's sort of, I guess, my.
Yeah. If they had computers and shit, we have no chance of knowing.
Definitely not computers. That's none of that.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So yeah.
Unless
they made a big granite thing, because I think Rushmore is granite. They'd made that big thing where they're like, here's how you make an ancient computer and stuff. Then we'd be like, cool, got it. You had them. Fine.
But also, we're just assuming that computers are the ultimate form of technology, right? Yeah. Where you're imposing your view of
pretty good
progress.
Yes.
That they're very good, but to what end?
The only thing that I can point to is no, definitely not. Is that it proves our civ's precision because we're doing it at a nano level. Whereas
that's true.
They were making stuff to a very good level, true north and all that stuff, but we're doing stuff on such a small scale that our precision is what makes us impressive. Not mine personally. I've got very shaky hands, but the machines that we build to make computer chips and stuff are they're the height of our technology, really.
I think technology for the most part is in some ways enslaving us, but that's by. But what I do want to give technology its due in that if we did detect an asteroid that was coming to Earth that was going to cause serious damage,
which we can't detect them all. But
we can't detect them all. We can't at all. That's fine. But if we did and we knew about it and we had enough time, we have just recently developed the technology to be able to do something about it. Yep. So we are actually, in a way, we're masters of our own destiny, which we didn't have without technology. Unless you have some kind of way of using telepathy to move a comet.
Maybe they did have a crack. We don't know.
Maybe.
They go, it's coming. They go, fuck, we are not prepared for this at all. We're only just starting to do. How's Gobekli going? It's really good. It's flourishing. We're thinking about filling it in. Right, don't yet.
Maybe this was the path of human history that you need to go down to be able to avert
one day avert it. Yeah.
a catastrophe, because we've been struck by comets time and time again. This is sort of what Graham Hancock's
so you've got
point.
a very limited window, don't you, as a civ, to be able to come up with these means to stave off. Meanwhile, the planet's dying, by the way. Meanwhile, while we're trying to like nuke asteroids out of the sky that don't exist yet, that we know of, right? While that's happening, while we're doing that, we're also sapping the whole world of all of its juices and going to leave it a burnt out husk. Yeah?
Yeah, mate, because the economy needs to keep...
Why, somebody
the
please think of the economy.
Needs to keep getting bigger. If the economy doesn't keep getting bigger, shit starts going wrong. This is sort of like the weird position we've found ourselves in, is productivity has to keep improving. The economy has to keep growing, because all the banking system, all lending, security, everything is based on the principle that there will be more tomorrow than there is today.
Great. But the asteroid's coming and we're going to send the nuke, and Bruce Willis is busy.
Bruce Willis has dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever he has. He has a neurodegenerative disorder. We can't be relying on Bruce Willis now. Who's up next?
Probably like Chris Pratt is who you'd cast in like a modern day Armageddon movie.
I'm not good with actors. Who's Chris Pratt? That sounds...
He was in like Guardians of the Galaxy. He's in like Community.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah. I think I know the guy.
I think he was in... Is he in Community? Is that the one I'm thinking of?
I don't think we need actors. I don't think the actors are helping.
Right.
I think we need to do away with the actors. I think we need like proper miners.
You need scientists and stuff, right?
Yeah, or like I don't know what we need, but I don't think it's Bruce.
Well, someone else then. If you got Arnold Schwarzenegger, like basically get the cast of Expendables to do it, then now we're talking, right? Bruce Willis was in the Expendables as well,
Perhaps.
by the way.
Oh, this has been the Egypt special.
I
didn't think we were doing one.
It was another show. I don't know what it was.
Okay, I'm just going to run through a couple of headlines because we have to just rush this now. These are just some things that happened during the week. Okay, Japan's releasing 1.3 million tons of water
over
used
time.
to cool over time. I have no problem with it. I like to poke the bear.
People are kicking up a stink about it, but I heard about this plan a long time ago to release some of the radioactive water from the Fukushima stuff, and they're doing it slowly over a long period of time or something. It's a lot of water, but it's a
you could
long
drink
time.
it. Apparently, if it wasn't salty, you could drink it.
Right.
There's only a very, very minuscule amount of radioactive tritium, it's called, and it's so dilute that it falls below the safe drinking levels. But I don't know who's making these safe drinking levels.
Yeah, and look, I understand that most of the time the people who experience the worst parts of this are the people who don't have any money, like the people who are, on the islands off there, just going, what are you talking about? You're going to kill the fishing industry, which is what's happening already.
Okay. We've already spent too much time on this because we got to go in a second. I got to go to Egypt. I was just saying we should market it as an energy drink. I think they're missing out on a huge opportunity. But anyway,
great call. Hot topic, like a hot take there.
Speaking of economies, apparently China's miracle economy is grinding to a halt. Property market's imploding. It's not looking good for Australia.
It's all good news bears. Yeah. Prigozhin got probably assassinated by the Russian government.
I think that's an Epstein situation, isn't it? Another Epstein situation. Well,
someone's got offed.
He got offed. I mean, were we surprised? No.
Western intelligence is suggesting that there was some sort of like explosive on the plane, but that thing just fell out of the sky.
It raised my eyebrow, I'll tell you that much. And when it happened, I was like, this
Raised
always.
Dick brow.
Yeah, my dick got raised. India's won the space race.
The most recent space race, which was landing on the South Pole. There's ice there. They're checking it out.
Yeah, they're checking it out. Well done.
That was huge, huge, huge moment. And you mentioned how many countries have actually successfully landed on the moon to me the other day. What is it?
They're the fourth. India's the fourth.
That's pretty good, man.
A soft landing. Russia tried to land very close by to this. Yeah, a couple of weeks ago.
Smashed into it.
India tried to land about a year ago doing the same thing, and they had a software glitch and didn't make it. So it's tough. It's tough.
It is hard.
Yeah, it's clearly quite
Still hard. And again, I think it's the pyramids thing, just very quickly, how pyramids got worse and worse. Our spacefaringness got worse and worse, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's a good point.
We're trying to cut too many corners, or the safety things get in the way, or whatever it is.
You're so right. I reckon we made one god. We sent one guy to the stars, right? And then we thought we've done it, and we rested on our laurels.
And then we just started cheapening out. I mean, literally, your phone lasts less than. I said 6 years before. I was being generous.
You're so right. We rested on our laurels.
I've had a gutful, is what I've had.
Apparently, chess banned trans chess players. Apparently the World Chess Federation, whatever, has banned trans players from competing in whatever. I don't know. I didn't know that you could get. I thought the men and women competed together. I
would have thought so with something like chess. Anyway, that's news. Right?
And Trump, he's defying political gravity with his mugshot has been released. He's got his fourth indictment.
Yeah, he looks pretty stern. Looks upset.
And his ratings just keep going up and up and up every indictment.
Yeah, he just has to spend 20 minutes in a jail thing, and then numbers go up.
They actually need to stop arresting him because it's doing him too many favours.
Right, they're actually doing him a favour. Right, gotcha. Is that everything? Do you need to get on this plane? Email us at vacuousperspective@mail.com, and we'll see you when you get back, and we'll see you next week.
Looking forward to it.
All right, great. Have a good time.